So in this video, we're going to talk about how to create a steady stream of songwriting ideas so you never have to worry about running out of ideas and having no idea what to write a song about again. So the first idea for an infinite well of ideas is simply to put two unlike things together. Often a great way to come up with compelling ideas and symbols is simply to take two things that seem at odds and put them together. An example of this would be The Sound of Silence by Simon and Garfunkel. There is no sound of silence by definition, really, but that creates an intriguing title that makes us want to lean in and find out what is the sound of silence? What does that actually mean? Or another example of this would be Castle of Glass by Linkin Park. Castles aren't made of glass, so immediately the image of a castle that's made of glass is something that's kind of interesting and compelling and makes us want to know what is that symbol about. If the song title was Castle of Stone or Castle of Brick, we probably would just shrug and be like, yeah, seems fair enough. But Castle of Glass is something that is immediately intriguing and an interesting and compelling symbol. Another example of this would be Dancing on Broken Glass by Poets of the Fall. You wouldn't normally dance on broken glass, so immediately it creates a compelling image. Dancing on its own is not all that interesting, and doing something on broken glass maybe isn't necessarily that interesting either, but dancing on broken glass is actually very interesting because that is normally the opposite of what you would do on broken glass. And to make this really simple, a great place to start with this is simply to pick a noun and an adjective that normally would not be associated with that noun. An example of this would be Red Cold River by Breaking Benjamin. There are actually two adjectives there. We have cold. Rivers are very often cold, probably more often cold than not. But red, that's something that is interesting and different. Generally speaking, there are no red rivers. Maybe there's one or two in the world that have a certain amount of minerals that make it appear reddish, but generally speaking, rivers aren't red, and that immediately makes it much more interesting. If it were called Blue Cold River, you probably would just shrug and be like, yep, most rivers are bluish and most are cold. But Red Cold River immediately makes it more interesting. And as a bonus here, whenever we come up with a compelling song title or song idea with an interesting image, it really makes it more fun to try to discover, okay, now that I have this interesting image or song title, what would this be about? Can I find something that actually makes sense with this image? Because obviously we don't want to have just cool images for the sake of cool images. It needs to actually represent something. So something you can do is simply pick two words, a noun and an adjective, and make sure the adjective is an adjective that normally would not be with that noun. So if your noun is city, you could pick an adjective like dark, because basically by definition cities are never dark. If you went to a city and it was dark, something has gone horribly wrong. Usually you can see the skyline of a city from many miles away even at night because there are so many lights. What about something like desert? We could pick a color that wouldn't normally be associated with desert. By the way, that's a really easy way to do this. Just pick a color that something normally wouldn't be. Pick something like silver desert. All of a sudden, what does that mean? Is it literally made of silver? What's the reason for the silver desert? What does it actually represent? Or even something like rainy. Deserts generally aren't very rainy. By definition, a desert needs to be a place that gets very little rainfall. Something else we can do to have an infinite pool of ideas is simply to steal from other art. One of the reasons it's a great idea to steal from other art is it's a lot harder to do something that's illegal or worse, immoral and unethical. Think about it this way. If you copied someone else's painting, that's obviously super crappy to do. But if you take someone's painting and then write a song off of it, probably the artist would actually be honored that you made a song, especially if you pointed to the fact that, hey, this painting actually inspired this song. This is something that probably nobody would be upset about in the same way that nobody is really upset if you come up with a piece of art off of a song, or if you do a painting that honors your favorite TV show. Those things don't upset people, but people are gonna get upset, and rightfully so, because it's obviously wrong and stealing if you just rewrite someone's song, or if you do something like do a painting that is completely unoriginal and just blatantly steals from another painting. But when you write a song that steals or borrows from another art form, it's really kind of hard to do the wrong thing. Whereas if you're stealing or borrowing from another song, it's very easy to take that too far. Another great benefit of this is other art mediums have different tendencies than songs, so it can help you to break outside of that creative box you may find yourself in. Think about it like this. Already, if you incorporate ideas from other genres and tropes and tendencies from other genres into your genre, that already will make your music significantly different. Because sure, metal style guitars in metal tracks is just same old, but if you took an R&B track and used metal style vocals, all of a sudden you'd have a musical revolution on your hands. Think about acts like Korn or Linkin Park that really created a genre that was based on combining metal with hip-hop. So not only do different musical genres have different tendencies and tropes, but this is even more true with different art forms. This may be an overly simplistic example, but think about the will they, won't they. Will they, won't they is a huge trope on TV, and especially with TV sitcoms. But in songwriting, I feel like it's actually pretty rare to have any form of will they, won't they. It usually is they decided no or we decided yes. So even with a very simple, maybe silly example from TV, you can see how something that is a eye-roll worthy trope in one form of art is actually something that probably would be kind of different in a different art form. And there are so many different art forms out there that we can borrow ideas from. There's an infinite well, whether it's the book that you're reading, maybe you can tell the story from the antagonist point of view, or maybe you feel like in the movie you last watched, they actually picked the wrong character to be the protagonist because one of the side characters actually had a more interesting, compelling character and an interesting, compelling story. So you can actually write a song from that character's point of view instead. You also could go to an art museum and bring a notepad and write down any ideas you get from the different paintings and sculptures. And you don't even have to go to an art museum. You can simply use Google Images and search for things like ocean art, and then you see something like painting of the Lady of the Sea, and you're like, oh, actually that's the path I want to go down. Lady of the Sea art. And then somehow a Medusa painting comes up, and you're like, actually that seems like a good idea. You can go down a whole rabbit hole with a bunch of different ideas. Google Images is a super powerful tool to get ideas. And the best part about this too is that you can gather ideas very quickly because looking at a painting and being inspired by a painting takes about 2 seconds, but if you were to watch a whole movie, that takes about 2 hours to get inspired. And worse, if you watched a whole movie just to be inspired and then it didn't inspire you, then it was just 2 hours wasted on a movie. And in the year 2023, let's be honest, if it's a modern movie, it probably sucks. All to say, if we look for ideas everywhere, especially if we explore art mediums outside of our own, outside of music, there are so many different ideas that are out there for free that we can use and honor and give our own spin on in the form of a song. And a third idea to have unlimited access to ideas and really just never deal with the problem of sitting down to write a song and not even having an idea is to simply have a songwriting session that is dedicated to just gathering song ideas. Ideas are cheap and fast. If you were to set a 10-minute timer and challenge yourself to just write all of the different song ideas you have, and you are not allowed to turn on your internal editor, you just write everything you think of. Don't think about, is this a bad idea? Is this a great idea? Don't worry about it. Just write down all of your ideas, because in the moment, you might actually be wrong about whether it is a good idea or not. And even if it is a bad idea, maybe later you look at the idea and you say, that was kind of a bad idea, but that inspires this other idea that I think is a great idea. And really, there's just no reason to ever run out of songwriting ideas, because in 10 minutes, you probably can come up with 10 plus ideas very easily. So your ideas should always be vastly outpacing your songs, because given a 10-minute timer, you should come up with at least 10 song ideas, probably. Even on a bad day, I assume you'd at least have one song idea per 10 minutes. But if you set a 10-minute timer, you would never write 10 songs, and certainly wouldn't even write one song 99.9% of the time, because a 10-minute song is, at least lyrically, probably going to be terrible. Maybe musically, it could be okay. All to say that if we actually take the time and effort to simply dedicate some songwriting sessions to just gathering ideas, not worrying about whether they're good ideas, not worrying about how to develop the ideas, or whether we actually will develop the ideas, no. Just gather ideas, whether it's going to Google Images or looking through your recent movie watch history, or whether you just sit down and you say, let me see, let's take a noun that I think is really cool and then pick an adjective that doesn't seem to go with the noun and see if it's something that resonates with me. Actually, correction, don't even see if it resonates with you, because you're writing down all your ideas and turning off that internal editor, because your internal editor is not helpful when you are writing, and it certainly isn't helpful when you are just thinking of ideas. The internal editor is something that is valuable when you are editing. And outside of editing, it really is just something that gives you writer's block. So in summary, we would all be better off if we didn't rely on just reaching into the ether for song ideas whenever we need them, but instead have a system or process for gathering ideas intentionally, so that we always have way more ideas than we have songs, because, well, that should be a pretty easy thing to accomplish, because ideas are cheap, ideas are easy to gather, they can be very quick to gather, and writing songs just isn't that fast. We can always manufacture ideas by taking two things that don't normally go together and putting them together, and we also can borrow ideas from all the different other art forms. And something that we should be doing is intentionally having songwriting sessions where we aren't actually writing songs at all, we are just gathering different ideas for our songs. And then in a different songwriting session, we will look at all our ideas and figure out which one do I want to develop further, or maybe we improvise some music and figure out, this music seems to pair really well with this song idea that I came up with. So hopefully this was helpful to you. If it was, something else that you'll definitely find helpful is my free guide on 20 different ways to start writing a song, because a great way also to stay inspired and not run out of ideas is to not rely on just one way of starting a song. If we always start our song with a guitar chord progression, eventually that is going to get old, and we might be re-inspired just by trying to write a bass line first instead, or a melody first, or coming up with a song title that resonates with us and reverse engineering what that title actually would be about. So be sure to check that out, my free gift to you. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll talk to you in the next one.